Hello and welcome to or back to my channel. I am Kit, your friendly feminist cat lady spinster, and today we are going to be talking about chapter 8 of Michelle Easton's How to Raise a Conservative Daughter. This chapter is titled Service to Others Yields Self-Reliance. Although in a brief glance at this chapter, I feel it could be retitled to Conservatives Love to Give Back. Just don't tell them to. You can't tell a conservative to do something. Don't tread on them, okay? We open with another quote from Reagan. Actually, I think her love of Reagan, because she mentions also working for Bush the first, but she never quotes him. However, Reagan did a lot of things while in office, none of them really beneficial to Americans, well, unless they were wealthy Americans. So I guess her beliefs really kind of tie into Reaganism. And that is probably why she quotes him so damn much, even though it's been over 30 years since he was last in office. Reagan understood that something special happens when we serve others. An outer benefit is given and an inner blessing received. Those who receive are able to stand taller knowing that people care. Well, you don't care that much, Michelle, since you'd rather people be able to pick and choose what they donate to. Their needs are met through kindness, and gratitude often fills their hearts. Or is that what this is really about? You don't want people to, receive aid from the government because then it's just a matter of course. You want people to really be grateful to you. You want people to know that it is because of you that they have food or a job or whatever. The giver is also blessed in a way that transcends the hustle and bustle of everyday life. You can't quantify it. The world just becomes a better place. And when your daughter gives with a pure heart, she will know a deep inner satisfaction. She will become more of who she was made to be. When we give, we grow. There's less need for government and dependence when we volunteer. But what happens when you decide not to volunteer? There's still going to be the need. Service changes lives. I've seen it many times with my own eyes. And parents can help their daughter experience the joy that comes from giving no matter how small her contribution. I recommend she always start with people in your own family who are in need. If you can't be kind to your relatives, it is hard to make up for it elsewhere. Scripture warns us not to turn our back on our own. Still, relaying the concept of giving, receiving, and self-reliance to girls can be tricky. We live in a what's-in-it-for-me culture where volunteering time and energy for unpaid work is counterintuitive. As a rule, young people tend to shy away from initiating selfless service work, especially outside of religious contexts. If they don't understand that it's truly better to give than to receive, then service is just one more expectation added to their already crowded plate. It seems like mandatory virtue signaling to teenage years. Parents can push their daughter to volunteer, but the magic doesn't come from obligation. It comes from a sincere desire to help other people. Consider your daughter's might. What are her passions? What does she care about to the extent that she will want to give? How can she make a difference in that space? Before exploring ways to motivate your daughter, it's important to understand the folly of forced service, a weak substitute for the real thing. And that right there sums up my objection to relying only on private charities to help people. If those people suddenly can't help anymore or don't want to help anymore, then that's it. Forced service misses the mark. There is a big difference between choosing to do something and being forced to do it. If your daughter had to serve food at a lunch counter or pick up trash on the side of the road because someone forced her, it may look the same on the outside as a person who volunteers to do it, but it's not. One side seeks out the opportunity to serve. They are self-motivated, willing participants. They want to be there. The other side is doing what they have to do. They are more apt to go through the motions and get it over with while harboring potential resentments. Something inside is missing. The military draft is a good example of the difference. Young men were forced to join the military during the Vietnam War. They had to serve or pull strings to get out of it. Rather than amass the biggest motivating fighting force possible, the draft undermined the authenticity of service, and the result was an inferior system to what we have today. Anyone who wears the uniform deserves great respect. God bless them. But I come from a military family, and I can tell you that most service members are totally opposed to forcing people to serve, except in the most extreme circumstances. They would rather have one volunteer who wanted to enlist than 10 people who were forced to comply. Why? Because you can't make people want something. Forcing them produces weaker morale and results in service born from free choice. If you're forced to join the military and are then forced to go overseas to serve, you can also die. You probably will not die when, serving food at a homeless shelter. Yet our education system imposes mandatory service on many children these days. Like so many misguided initiatives, the intentions seem good, but the unintended consequences are predictable. Students have to log public service hours or they can't graduate. Sometimes it's a requirement for scholarships, college admissions, or, in the case of one Claire Booth-Luce Center Summer Fellow to join the National Honor Society. It doesn't make sense. Helping others is wonderful, but the idea of mandatory volunteerism is an oxymoron that helps nobody. Studies have shown that mandatory volunteer service undermines the desire to volunteer in the future. Please don't misunderstand. There are good things that could come from these programs, but ultimately they do not work. The inside change isn't there. Something important is missing. Let's just walk through this. So Michelle thinks that you should not force people to give. However, you also shouldn't dedicate a portion of taxes that we're already paying to help people. So really, if you are in need of help, you're just kind of screwed in Michelle's world, because if people don't want to help you, well, you can't make them, and taxes should also really just go to the military and should otherwise be cut. Okay. You don't need government-run schools to make you serve, or hoity-toity private school administrators for that matter. Government programs and oxymoronic mandates crowd out self-initiative and foster a shallow concept of giving. If you want to encourage charity, it has to be voluntary. Yeah, don't tread on those conservatives. They will give when they are good and ready, and if you die of starvation or whatever in the meantime, well, you should have bootstrapped harder. One of the girls hit the nail on the head. Requiring service hours doesn't energize the grace we have inside us. I asked her what she meant, knowing she was absolutely right. The virtue that grows inside of us can't be mandated, she replied. Exactly. Making people give also has the effect of turning them away from what they are supposed to be gaining. Girls may be forced to perform community service as a condition of academic approval, even if it's at the expense of real needs at home. Caring for a disabled sibling or an aging grandmother with Alzheimer's disease doesn't count. But checking boxes on forms so that school administrators can advertise their moral superiority does count. Is that why schools do that? So they can advertise their moral superiority? Because I had no idea that my school had service requirements for graduation until I was like 3 months from graduation. So they were doing a really bad job of advertising their moral superiority in that case. There's also the problem of overscheduling. Many girls are maxed out with studies, activities, jobs, family responsibilities, and social pressures. Adding unpaid make work to the mix is unfair. It can increase anxiety and detract time from your daughter's priorities, including her self-initiated service commitments. You can't dictate someone's inner life or mandate kindness and compassion. You can only force people to comply with directives. That's why compulsion is essential for socialism and left-wing philosophy, and the freedom to choose is a conservative value. There are definitely people on the left who use mandatory community service programs to impose their views, and they want to train your daughter to change society in a leftward direction. But according to Michelle, if people are using mandatory community service programs, because they're mandatory, there's no like inner light or passion or whatever. So trying to train a conservative daughter to go leftward wouldn't work because it'd be mandated and the inner light wouldn't be there to inspire her to go leftward or some such nonsense. Of course, we want to encourage young people to give, be virtuous, and to step outside of themselves. And some people may somehow benefit from forced service. But parents need to understand that it misses the mark and gives a false impression of what genuine service is all about. Do not let government schools or private schools, which aren't much better when it comes to imposing views, raise your daughter. I love how she says government schools instead of public schools, just like add that extra fear in there. Virtue signaling. Before moving to more positive aspects of service, parents should recognize the phenomenon of virtue signaling and how its adherents can put conservative girls in the crosshairs of social activists. Put simply, virtue signaling is when people publicly express their high moral character but without authenticity. It's a fake service mentality that tends to coincide with attacking people who disagree. Look at me, I'm a good person because I support woke social activism. If you don't agree with my opinions, then you are a racist, homophobic misogynist. No. Who says that? I need sources. Just because you don't volunteer doesn't mean you're racist, homophobic, or misogynist, let alone all three at once. Such unseemly behavior is part of the cancel culture that's rampant on college campuses and social media. It has also infected elements of the news media and our political discourse. This new moralism is a cheap veneer of compassion that covers a desperate need for approval and attention. Something inside is missing. Shallow nods of serving others doesn't fill the void. It's self-promotion without actual sacrifice. Anyone can bandwagon this week's feel-good trending hashtag on Facebook or Twitter, but who is going to put in the real work to help others with a selfless, joyful heart? You are much more likely to find girls in churches and synagogues helping poor children and the elderly than campus radicals who aggressively push politics from behind a keyboard. Yeah, I believe they call that keyboard activism or slacktivism, and no one looks kindly on that. So if Michelle thinks that leftists encourage keyboard activism, she is much mistaken. Everybody knows that it's easy to be an activist behind a keyboard. No one is impressed by it. Do not let your daughter be dissuaded from the real thing. Teach her that service is quiet, not self-promoting. The idea of anonymous giving is a great way to check her motivations. Is your daughter giving so she can brag and gain something for herself? Or is she serving others regardless of whether anyone outside her circle knows about it? Virtue signaling is the polar opposite of anonymous giving, and it's become a cultural force. Corporations, media, athletes, celebrities, and politicians are increasingly prone to shaping their brands around pseudo service. Many give money and attention to groups and causes that intentionally use the thin outward appearance of service to advance radical political goals. It's a way of promoting themselves while keeping the mob at bay. Claiming to support the Black Lives Matter organization on Instagram, participating in campus protests against Israel, or jumping into an online mob to get a random person fired from their job or thrown out of school simply because they ran afoul of activist social parties is nothing to help people in need. Your daughter does not have to follow the crowd. She can embrace the idea of equal opportunity without becoming a follower of the Marxist-inspired group receiving hundreds of millions of dollars to affect political outcomes. Are you a conspiracy theorist, Michelle? Selflessly volunteering to help underprivileged children learn to read or giving up some free... funding those government schools better would probably help those underprivileged children in learning to read more than having your daughter teach them how. Or giving up some free time to help a children's cancer ward at a local hospital is infinitely more valuable to humanity than wearing t-shirts with glib political phrases or tweeting how great you are. So, does Michelle think people are actually impressed when corporations put, pride logos on their Twitter pages for June? I can assure her that we can see the rainbow washing for what it is, and we are not impressed by it. And we also know that corporations want to sell, and they will follow the people that are more likely to buy from them and what they believe in. It is more profitable for a company to be inclusive than it is for them to say, ew, gay people are gross. I'm tempted to believe that Michelle doesn't know any leftists. I mean, she does. She is pretty old. But she's just creating straw men. She doesn't really care about what actual leftists believe and want to achieve. We're all just nameless, faceless soldiers in some imaginary war that she's trying to convince conservatives that they need to fight. Instilling the willingness to serve. If making people volunteer fails the internal change test, or is used to advance an agenda, then how can conservative parents raise their daughters to want to volunteer? You can't force a choice, it has to come organically. But let's be real. Most kids don't wake up on a Saturday morning itching to visit a retirement home or spend their spare time making care packages for soldiers serving overseas during the holidays. They know it's a good idea, but that doesn't make service a priority. Families with religious backgrounds have it easier. Churches and synagogues are constantly engaged in voluntary service projects. Helping the poor, easing the struggles of sick and hurting souls, staffing a pregnancy center, and blessing people without payment or expectation of reward is a major aspect of faith. The Bible makes hundreds of exhortations to give, and the benefits of putting others before oneself have been known for millennia. The key, then, is making giving and service fun. One excellent family service activity is Operation Christmas Child. And then there's also the angel tree that she recommends. But didn't Christmas Child, was it that one that had the scandal? That's cute. Wasn't that one that had the scandal because you pack the shoe boxes full of toys and whatever, and then they essentially throw them all out and repack them? Doesn't it create a lot of extra waste or something? I feel like there was some sort of thing about that, but anyway, maybe I'm thinking of a different program or misremembering, but these programs can be great, but I would highly recommend doing research before you involve yourself in a program. Parents, like CEOs, drill instructors, or anyone else in a leadership position, must practice what they preach if they want to affect change in those they lead. There are never any guarantees, but your daughter is much likely to develop a sincere desire to serve if she sees her mom and dad engaged in the wonders of giving. Service can be performed within a family, for example. It can involve helping a neighbor or child of an alcoholic mother or absent father. It can also involve fundraising, foreign service, or building an organization. Start within your own family. Commit random acts of selflessness at home and don't make a big fuss about it. Do kind things without looking for applause and gain. Your daughter will notice. Then, what are you doing? Then, reach beyond the four walls of your home and help people you don't know. Don't expect anything in return and persist through the inevitable hiccups. So I do agree with this. I think, volunteering and helping and not expecting reward or applause is important. But I'm also still in favor of government programs to help people because there's just no possible way that the average everyday American can help enough people that there will be no more need for government programs. And also, again, the government reaches everyone and charities just don't have that bandwidth. Also, the government is a continuous service as opposed to charities, which rely on donations and also people to run them. And if one day the people don't show up or the donations dry up, then what happens? Once you have experienced the joy that comes from an impoverished child's smile or the satisfaction from knowing you contributed to the genuine well-being of others, invite your daughter into the experience. Show her how it's done. Parents can also help align their daughter's passions with genuine service commitments. The problem of mandatory service programs is that they dictate what girls are allowed to do, or they provide a short list of approved items. In other words, your daughter has very little say in how she can dedicate herself to others. Or as in the case of my small town, I had to really scramble to find my service commitment because we really didn't have anything. And for anyone wondering, I eventually ended up volunteering for a few hours at the elementary school library. Putting flags or wreaths on veterans' graves is an incredibly meaningful service opportunity, especially if there are any veterans or service members in your family. Helping an elderly neighbor with yard work or even shoveling his or her sidewalk when it snows is a special way for her to bless someone she knows with their service. Volunteering to pick up groceries, put up Christmas trees, and holiday decorations are also kind ways to offer helpful service to the elderly, single parents, or someone who is sick and recovering from surgery. If your daughter loves animals, why not ask her to volunteer at an animal shelter? If she has fond memories of the beach, help her organize a trash pickup at different beaches in your area. So yeah, I do think it's a great idea to have people volunteer for things that, have a special meaning to them. Like, I personally volunteered before COVID at an animal shelter, more specifically a cat rescue, which is where I got my little Ellie. Yes. She was staring at me during my volunteership, this little 2.2-pound kitten. And the next day I came back and adopted her. And talk about church. Teach your daughter that service is a privilege, not a chore, that can help develop a sincere impulse to serve others. It's an inversion of how most people think of volunteerism, but it works. One of the many benefits of belonging to a community of faith is that giving is embedded into a worldview. It's not a foreign concept that has to be mandated. It's part of the fabric of living. Mission trips, for example, are commonplace. They are awesome opportunities. Girls travel to places like South America or Africa with a supervised group, make new friends with shared values, and help people in need. There is nothing wrong with trips to different parts of America either. Yeah, I don't agree with mission trips. And I would be willing to bet that anyone who watches my channel already knows why. The many benefits of serving others. There are so many benefits of serving others that it's hard to know where to begin. But, you shouldn't force people to serve others. They need to discover those benefits for themselves. That said, authentic service isn't performed for personal benefit. It's a selfless act made on behalf of other people. The beauty, however, is that when your daughter gives irrespective of reward, wonderful blessings will flow to her anyway. Genuine service is like a boomerang. It always comes back to the giver. Happiness, satisfaction, joy, love. These are among the most precious gifts in life, and they come seamlessly when we give with pure intentions. Giving also increases confidence and counteracts the stress that comes from dwelling on one's own problems. In other words, if your daughter wants self-esteem, then she should do things that earn her respect and commendation. I'm sorry, I thought self-esteem was a liberal thing, and what was it? Self-respect was a conservative thing, or was it the other way around? There's nothing more effective at getting out of your own head than helping another person. That's what 12-step groups like Alcoholics Anonymous are based on. You help others to help yourself, and things get better. Parents can watch their daughter become more self-reliant as she grows through giving. Her sincere efforts will also support self-reliance in her community or wherever she dedicates herself. When you serve others through voluntary means, it reduces the need for government in that space. Aha! So that is aha. Witnessing the difference between government dependency and voluntary service will inform your daughter's conservative views in ways that textbooks and news articles never will. She will see the difference between choice and compulsion in service versus dependency firsthand. Except in places like my hometown, which is literally a rural village surrounded by trees, there is still a need for government assistance in that space because there are churches there, but the churches can't fill the need that the people there have. There's not enough jobs to put people on their feet and keep them there, and there's not enough people that are in a place to give back to have like a healthy volunteer, group. And Michelle is clearly a city person, and she does not understand the struggles of rural America. The bigger picture. The libertarian author Ayn Rand once wrote a collection of essays that were compiled into a book called The Virtue of Selfishness. The writings expound her objectivism, which considers altruism a destructive force and selfishness the guiding principle for progress. It's a stark reminder that rigid libertarians are not conservatives, though we have plenty of overlap. Parents should impress upon their daughter that service is not a function of economic value and that there is much more to life than supply, demand, price, and efficiency. There are smiles, children, love, and humanity. Giving with pure intentions isn't wasteful, it's wonderful. Ask your daughter, what would happen if everyone decided not to serve? Consider the left-wing assault on police really, or the harmful view that America's military is a tool of oppression. What if cops and soldiers stopped showing up? Think about the firefighters who risk their lives to save others from grave danger, Or the selfless inner-city Catholic school teachers that stay late to make sure that a struggling child learns the basics of reading and math. If these folks quit, our society fails. Thankfully, we will always have a class of people who will step up and sacrifice for the rest of us. They should be celebrated and their contributions honored. Yeah, pay teachers more, please. Sadly, the culture seems to be going in the opposite direction with spoiled multimillionaire athletes kneeling during the national anthem. She does know that most of those athletes weren't multimillionaires before they became athletes, right? Celebrities badmouthing their own country for cheap applause, and corporate giants feeding the politics of envy all the way to the bank. But I thought Michelle was in favor of corporations? All of this takes America's servants for granted, those who keep our streets safe, and the private volunteers who help those in need. Fly the American flag. Take pride in the good and praise the sacrifices of those who have given so much for the rest of us to live in peace and prosperity. Teach your daughter to put her little right hand over her heart when she says the Pledge of Allegiance or when she hears the first notes of the Star-Spangled Banner. Teach her history so that she will know when she's being led astray and take her with you to vote. These actions honor the service of patriots and showgirls that we have much to be grateful for, and that it's only right that we should choose to give back. At a glance, when your daughter gives, she will receive. She will grow and become more of who she was created to be. She will gain self-reliance, and she will influence people through her honest intentions and hard work. It may be difficult and thankless at times, but the rewards are worth it. Authentic service cannot be forced. It comes from making a sincere choice to help others. Teach your daughter the magic of service, starting with those in need in your own family. Teach her that it feels wonderful to help someone in need or advance a cause that brings good into the world, even though, and in fact because, she is giving her time and energy away for free. Theoretically, I agree with this chapter. I don't think that you should force people, to volunteer, and that's why I think the government should be there so that instead of having this great need, we have the government to fill most of the need and then charities to fill up some gaps. Because, really, I don't think we can have too much service. I don't think we can have too much volunteering. We can't have too much giving. But it doesn't really make sense that Michelle says this when she also doesn't think the government should be involved in giving or serving or mandating or anything. Part of Michelle's message here seems to be that we are all in this together, but at the same time, she doesn't think we should all be paying into a government to give us roads to drive on or bridges that aren't taxed or tolled so that we don't have to pay extra just to go to work, or also infrastructure so that when we drive across the bridge we have a reasonable expectation that it won't fall apart as we're driving over it, or that we shouldn't have to pay extra so our kids can get an education, or that we should be able to go to a library where we can, check out books to expand our minds or to provide entertainment or to use the computers there to job search. Or, libraries also provide services like resume writing and language classes and things like that. And those are all paid for with our taxes, for that matter. So are police and firefighters. I just don't understand people like Michelle. I really don't. I think at some point when you have enough money, you start to lose touch with reality, and people who've always had enough money think it's just so easy to have money, and therefore they forget that not everyone has that access to money that they had or have. And I hope that if I ever do have enough money to not have to worry about money, that I never forget it's not that way for everyone, and I think I got mine, screw everybody else. They should work harder, because I've known for many, many years that working hard does not guarantee you not just more money, but enough money to live. And I think that is a lesson that Michelle is missing. The fact that working hard does not guarantee that you will be able to live. I think that is enough for that chapter. I filmed 2 chapters today, and I feel like I need a nap and some more coffee and maybe a stress ball. I hope you enjoyed this video. Please let me know what you thought about this chapter below in the comments. Please like and subscribe to my channel if you haven't done so already, and if you like my content. I will see you in the next video. Bye!